Welcome you all. Here we are in a new session of our Living Scripture series. How to live Scripture, how to, for a few minutes a week at least, hopefully more, concentrate on some particular passage and make it ours. Embrace, integrate in our lives, own it, in the good sense of the term. So today we are addressing a very interesting text from the Hitopadesa, which invites, I will say, for coherence. So the verse says like this: manasy anyad, vacasy anyad, karmany anyad, durātmanām. Manasy ekaṁ, vacasy ekaṁ, karmany ekaṁ, mahātmanām. Translation says, the wicked think one thing, say something else, and do yet another thing. Great souls think, say, and do one and the same thing. So here we have another definition of Mahatma, what a great soul is, and of course what the durātma is. Here we have these two definitions in Sanskrit, durātma and Mahatma. Mahātmanām means a great soul. We all are atmas, or souls, or self. Mahatma speaks about the self that is expanded, the big self, which is the self plus its potential, as I like to say. There is something that we are an atma, but who we are includes all that we can be. Mahatma, a great soul, something expanded. And then we have durātma, which is contracted self, contracted consciousness. So what makes us contracted? What makes us expanded? That's the difference between durātma and Mahatma. And this verse is presenting it from a very unique perspective and classical language in our tradition, resorting to this idea of manasa, vacas, and karma. Mind, word, thoughts, words, actions. So what do we do with them? So the verse is saying, someone who is wicked, or we could say a durātma, someone in a contracted state of consciousness, someone who is not aware of her own potential as an atma, as a soul, behaves in incoherent ways. Manasy anyad, vacasy anyad, karmany anyad. Anyad means other, something else, one thing, another. So manasy anyad say, thinks one thing, that person, says something else, does something else. In other words, I'm thinking something, but I'm not saying what I'm thinking. I'm thinking one thing, then I'm saying something else. Somehow I'm not aligned between there's no transparency between my thoughts and my mouth, my head and my mouth, so to say, my thoughts and my words. There's some distortion going on there. And then on top of that, I say something else, which is already distorted from the original thought, but I end up doing on top of that something else. So there is no coherence, basically. Coherence, the term coherence in itself means tied together, interestingly. So we can apply that to the coherence. In this case, thoughts, words, acts, all tied together, all coherent. So what characterizes a durātma, another word to say an unenlightened soul, is a lack of coherence, contradiction between thinking, speaking, and acting. Sounds familiar? And by contrast, again, manasy ekaṁ, vacasy ekaṁ, karmany ekaṁ. Instead of anyat, which means something else, ekaṁ, one and the same thing. So ekaṁ mahātmanām. A mahatma, or a great soul, or someone aware of her own potential and who behaves accordingly, therefore will, and there are degrees of that, of course, it's not black and white here. That person will think, say, and do one and the same thing, ekaṁ. So what I'm thinking, I'm speaking. What I'm speaking, I'm turning into action. Whatever was began in the subtle realm of thought, desire, intention becomes exposed, transparently exposed, vulnerably exposed through my words. My words reflect my thinking. That's in itself powerful. I mean, those words that actually reflect our inner world are those words that have the most powerful impact. What to speak if then I'm acting upon my words? You follow my point? So the more coherence we have in this sequence, the more impact there will be. And that's what we will find in the Mahatmas, in the great personalities across history, great teachers, saints, sages, whomever. What made them special is basically this adherence to the truth, adherence to coherence. Even if at times they may fail in that, but this sincere commitment, this deep integrity. Integrity speaks about integration, integrating thoughts, words, and acts, and making them, three of them, one. In our particular Gaudiya tradition, sometimes this is depicted as in the sannyas and the monks, tridanda, which represent mind, words, and body in the service of the truth. And there are many prayers in our tradition and across traditions that invokes these three functions, which somehow summarize our whole existence. Aham tabasmi. Aham tabasmi. I'm trying to. Tanu bhat manobir aham tabasmi. Tanu bhak manobir. With my body, tanu bhak, with my words, mano, with my mind, aham tabasmi. Oh, my sweet absolute, I'm all yours. So my thoughts are for you, my words are for you, my acts are for you. I'm acting for your pleasure, speaking for your pleasure, thinking for your pleasure. That's another way of speaking. Dedicating each of our faculties to ekaṁ, to this one center, to serve in this one interest and principle, the supreme truth, in love. So very similar to the verse in the Bhagavad Gita, which speaks about Vyabhyasa mikavodi ekeha kurunandana mahusakashyanantasya budayo vyabhyasainam, which says the person who is determined with proper intelligence has one goal in mind, but the rest bahusakahyanantas, their determination is scattered all over. It's multi-branched. So again, thinking one thing, speaking another thing, doing another thing. No, still we are not integrated but disintegrated. Right? And it feels like that sometimes. So this verse speaks, again, not in black and white. It's not that there's only people who is fully aligned with these three functions and fully disaligned with them. Most of us lie somewhere in between those two extremes. So it's just a call to continue the work of integration, to continue the work of putting all our faculties together, to align all our dimensions in a more and more coherent way, and to believe in the power of this alignment, of this coherence, to understand how the more I can entertain thoughts that are worthy of sharing, even if some of my thoughts, that's the point, even if I have a thought that is not very enlightened, I can speak about that vulnerably in a safe space, confess my crime, so to say, and then act upon those words, trying to reform in a healthy way. So still I'm keeping this transparency thread of sharing what I'm thinking and acting upon what I'm sharing. It doesn't mean that only I can speak what I'm thinking when I have in the most enlightened thoughts. So whatever the situation we're in, we're all invited to cultivate this triple type of coherence. Whatever we are thinking, that can always be shared, put into words, whether it is something that is shareable in public or there's something that I need to share in a more private setting in the context of seeking help and guidance. And whatever that may be the case, then acting upon that. The more we can keep this thread working, the more empowering, powerful and empowering will be our life, our example for others and for ourselves. So this is the gift that came to us today from the Hitopadesa invited us to turn gradually more and more from Duratma to Mahatma, getting close to a more and more expanded version of ourselves and leaving all contractedness and embracing more and more our potential incoherence. So let me know, what do you think about this verse? If you have any further reflections, if this verse evokes something in particular that you feel is worth of sharing, please share in the comment section. We are all here, honored and happy to entertain dialogue. See you next week for our next session of Living Scripture.